That's 3 months.
There's no wind. There's no wind. It's how you lift these guys.
Are we okay without a mask?
You may wear your mask if you wish.
Howdy.
I see, man.
Oh, yeah. Miss a meeting and look at that. I know. That's like
Signing up for speaking, correct?
No, because it's not, we're still,
I know, but what?
listed as a
You
telemeeting.
know, I was on this.
So, okay.
Fox, he's asked me a few questions. I got to try to get that because I am so quiet. I have did you think you told me
So even though we have
there's so much wrong on every side.
I think legally that's
education reform, but because he didn't meet any of and then we marched
Oh,
I mean, I certainly respect it.
well, his message on Saturday was, I thought, really good. What's that?
yeah.
And then Sunday he kind of came to that and said, you know, you can't be holding responsible for the police department. This is the council manager of the government. I can't be involved in the police department. Okay, David. It's true, but he gets confused when he plays that card.
Yeah.
All right. It's true.
I had asked my secretary this morning in anticipation of you.
well, that's the thing. Maybe that's the issue.
They're very complicated.
I agree.
Trustees stay at home if people wish to utilize them.
Good afternoon. 1 o'clock. Greg, can you all hear me on the screen?
Yes, we can.
Wow, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting for the Oklahoma County Criminal Justice Authority to order. Let me get back. Meeting was properly posted. We're going to do a roll call vote first of those that are actually present, starting with Trustee Arnold. Present.
Jim Couch.
Tricia Everest.
Kevin Calvi.
Ben Brown.
Frank Piacora, who's present.
David Makeup, present.
Do we have any trustees that are online?
Yes. M.T. Berry, present.
Hi, Chief. There you are. As a recognition, we are still considered a video conference meeting. This was set up to be a video conference in lieu of how we've been handling the COVID crisis and pandemic for the last few months. As such, I want to recognize that the majority of the trustees have appeared in person, so it is still considered a video conference and our agenda was set up as such. I recognize that there are members of the public here, and please know that you all matter and your voice matters, and that we certainly appreciate you taking the time to be with us. As it is a teleconference meeting in sorts, we do not have on the agenda plans for public comment. A number of the trustees can stay by afterwards and be able to speak with you if you wish or have questions, but generally speaking, on our regularly scheduled meetings, there's public comment listed on the agenda. So considering that this is just unique that we all happen to be also in the same building, it is technically and legally still a teleservice meeting and do not have the public comment forward. We do appreciate and recognize that you are here and look forward to speaking with you more in an individual capacity after. We've done the roll call. May we all please stand, and Senator, would you start us off in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As it is a telemeeting services, we have, in the event that we lose contact with any of the trustees that are online, we'll wait 30 minutes. Otherwise, there's a later agenda item that we have another meeting on June 22nd. We can end the meeting and convene. Should that 30 minutes lapse, that we would possibly just continue everything if we agree to the June 22nd meeting. Do we need a roll call that, or with the majority and present? I don't think that matters. I do call, as they've been prescribed to us, for an approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Mr. Couch moved. Chief Berry, is that okay as a second?
Yes, ma'am.
Any comments, questions? I'll continue with a roll call vote. Trustee Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Couch?
Yes.
The chair is yes. Commissioner Calvi?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Eckler? Yes. And Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes.
Thank you. We've been presented. I request call for the motion to approve the Keefe commissary contract.
And so move. Where did we leave off with this last time? Was it that we were going to bring it back?
There was Mr. Greg.
Yes. Hello?
In general, we did not agree. We agreed to the Keefe, but we moved it to this meeting in the event that there were any substantial changes.
That's right.
Were there any
Yes.
substantial changes of knowledge?
There was some language added to number 8 on page 2 that clarified, gave us a little bit of leniency on the start date. The contract had initially said that we would start it on July 1, but we did add some language there, not knowing for sure if that would be a locked-in type start date or not. So we did add a little bit of language on page 8, but that was all.
Generally gave us an out in the event that we didn't take over operations.
I will second.
Mr. Brown moves. Commissioner Calvi seconds. Any other comments or questions?
Yes. At our last meeting, I asked if we could change the modification so that it was modification for non-substantive matters.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we change the resolution to vote on that. So we're asking and authorizing the chair to modify, finalize, and execute the same. May we add to modify for non-substantive matters. And that's a really hard word, non-substantive.
Well, I think this is the final agreement.
But it still has in there authorizing the chair to modify.
Okay.
That was that authority. So
Sure.
another chair, this could go into perpetuity where it could be modified without the authority voting on it.
So I understand two questions. One is that for future and all other agenda items, that the substantive words are added.
Yes.
And the second thing I hear is asking Mr. Brown if he will modify his motion to include the words that we approve the Keefe Commissary Network, knowing that the chair will probably execute the document, so be it that there's no substantive changes.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. And I'll modify my second as well.
Right now. Any other comments or questions?
Greg, does this take into account how many staff members Keefe's going to provide to perform the service?
Yes, that is in the contract. I don't have it in front of me, but I think it is 6. They'll have a manager and 5 workers. But it is included in the contract. Is it not on the?
it may be in the schedule. I haven't seen it.
Okay, yeah, it has 6, 1 manager and 5 employees.
And does the contract speak to how many opportunities for purchase that the inmates been provided?
My internet's breaking up real bad. Could you repeat that, please, sir?
Yeah, Greg, I was just curious if, does the contract speak to how many opportunities per week the inmates will be given to purchase commissary?
2 to 3 times. Again, we left that a little bit vague because we're going to start off with bag and drop and then eventually add more and more cart services. But it will be a minimum of 2. And hopefully at some point we'll get to 3.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Calling the vote, trustee Arnold.
Yes.
Mr. Couch.
Yes.
Chair is yes. Commissioner?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Trustee Echo.
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes.
Item number 4, the Summit Food Service. This would be the same as that it was brought on for substantive change. I believe, Mr. Williams, I don't want to speak for you, but again, this contract, the general difference was as well an opt-out clause in the event that we did not actually take over operation.
That is true. That is section 7.8 is where that language is added. We also put some language in the CPI language where the increase on the second subsequent years, that contract can increase according to the CPI. And we made language in there that would be the December CPI. And that language was clarified. Those are the only 2 changes.
Thank you. I would call for a motion to approve the Summit Food Service with the addition to the language as previously stated that no substantive changes may be made.
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Second.
Mr. Covey, there's a second. Any comments or questions?
I just have a couple. Greg, I don't see where they comment. Let me ask it a different way. So currently the way the jail operation works is we have supervision of inmates to prepare the food. What is the mechanism that's going to be with this contract? Is my understanding that Summit's personnel is going to prepare the food themselves? Or they?
Yes, sir. Again, my connection is really splotchy, but as I understand your question, the contract is that Summit will be responsible for all food preparation, and the jail staff will only be in charge or responsible for security of the kitchen.
Thank you.
And we will use inmates. Summit does have, there's a provision that Summit can use our inmates to help them prepare the food.
So have they announced in the contract their staffing levels?
Yes, it is in their proposal. I should have had that with me, Mr. Honeycutt, but I don't have that readily available. But I think I can probably get that here.
This contract says that.
Okay, it doesn't look like it does have a specific number.
And in paragraph 3, under food services on page 3, it's talking about an outside inside and that they'll generate an e-commerce site that will allow third parties to purchase meals for inmates. And so is that more like is that going to be more considered a meal substitution, or is that kind of getting into a commissary type issue. I just wouldn't want there to be a conflict between the commissary contract and the food contract where their individuals have the ability to buy product in food sources.
Okay.
And I don't know that it would be an issue, but I just want a little bit of clarification.
I will clarify that with Keithy to make sure that they're understanding it. Summit's contract does allow for that.
Okay. And then I noticed that there's no commission based to the authority on that.
No, we will not get a commission on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams,
Yes?
can you hear me? Okay. Forgive me if I'm overlooking this, but I remember you talking about a calorie count for the meals to be served to the people incarcerated. Is that in this contract? I might be overlooking it.
No, it is not in this contract. And again, we will adjust that menu. We didn't really want to put specific menus in there because we wanted the ability to adjust that menu once we start serving meals, because some of the meals will be more favorable and some of the inmates will be, some of the meals will be more popular. So we wanted a little bit of latitude on adjusting those meals. So we didn't actually put menus in the contract.
Okay. It was one of the more attractive, personally, for me to agree to this contract that the calorie count was going to be high. So I just wanted to know, I mean, I know we need adjustability in menu, but I wanted to see if there's any way that a no less than a certain amount of calories be provided per meal.
Okay. Yep, I'll talk to them about that.
I mean, you can tell me no. I'm just wondering if that's possible.
No. That has been a very, very common discussion that I have had with Summit, and they are very committed to that 2,800 calorie count. Absolutely. They know that is one of the things that is a must. So they won't have a problem with putting that in the contract. If we want to add that to the contract, that will not be a problem.
Okay, I think that would be beneficial to us. All of us attorneys are thinking we need it in writing to make sure it happens in the future.
Okay.
All or most of us are gone from the trust.
Any other questions or comments? We're good?
How can we approve it with those changes in it?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
And your motion for exceptions, would you like the addition of the changes as mentioned?
That's exactly what I want.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Calvin? Any other questions? Calling the roll call. Trustee Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Chair, yes. Commissioner?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Echo-Whitewood?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Gonna abstain.
Mr. Berry?
yes,
Item number 5. Call for a motion to approve the agreement with Secure Technologies.
So moved.
second,
Thank you, Mr. Berry. We have Mr. Couch moved, Mr. Berry seconded. Comments and questions?
I have really comments and questions. I'm wondering if all the trustees were able to review this contract in adequate time. I checked the agenda on Friday and I didn't see it attached to the agenda Friday at 2 o'clock. I'm not sure if it was just a glitch on my behalf, but I didn't have a chance to review it until this morning. Also, with that, I personally would like to see us negotiate for a lower price per minute on the calls for the person incarcerated. So have a question in the beginning, did you all receive it? And then second, kind of want to move to place this on the agenda for further review next time with the discussion of negotiating for a lower price per minute cost on the phone calls.
Thank you. So, Greg Williams, there are a few questions I know, and maybe you should kind of update us with where we are with the Securus contract and what it was earlier. And as far as the negotiating of the lower, it is already at a lower amount than we would have. So, Greg, maybe should have, and the negotiated rate was at a rate that was consistent with the contract that they had with the state, so that the families would be used in the contract and move directly into those that would be further incarcerated or not. And it's already coming at a savings per minute, so we can discuss that, but that was also really well thought out of as well. So, Greg, there's the contract amount is lower. What is the amount difference, and what else do we need to know about Securus?
Okay, currently the call rate is 25 cents. Basically, it's 25 cents a minute. We lowered that 21% to 1975. One of the things that kind of we thought about was that is the State Department of Corrections negotiated rate. When it goes into effect, that's what that call rate will be. One of the things that's a little bit complicated about these phones is that the commission and the equipment and the free phone calls and the free video and the amount of phone calls and the amount of telephones, what level of upgraded equipment you get, all of that kind of is a package deal. So when you change the call rate, of course, you take less money out of the equation that has to be made up somewhere if we want to keep all the things that we wanted. One of the things that I really spoke hard on and negotiated very hard was that I wanted a lot of free services, free video visitations under certain circumstances, especially to the service providers, the public defender's office, all those partner agencies that we have. Those videos will be free. Those phone calls will be free. I wanted access to law library on the tablet to be free. I wanted every inmate to have a tablet. And really, this is most of the time they would give me 1-to-4 ratios. I wanted all the telephones in the jail, every telephone to remain and upgraded to the newest technology. The number of kiosks in the lobby. I mean, it's all a package deal. So when you change one of those pieces of the equation, then there's a chance you could change a lot of those pieces. But I'm willing to do whatever the trust would advise me to do.
So moving forward, some of that trade of dropping it down to 21% was to be able to have tablets and the video services to be operated at free as a trade-off, which is not currently happening.
I understand all of that, and I agree that it's attractive. I just wonder, can we not get all of those perks in addition to a lower price? What would we lose if we drop the price more down?
I had the opportunity to spend some time with Mr. Williams to go over this. This is a fairly complex, and he's right, it's all intertwined. The issue that's out there is that, yeah, we're getting a lot of free things. Greg was very focused on the inmates and making sure that they get the best services possible and the cheapest. But there's also, unfortunately, you take a look at the revenues coming back, because the revenues coming back do affect the budget of the jail too. And so, I mean, you could lower that, but it comes back at the price of lowering the dollars back to the trust. And there's a trade-off there. There's clearly a trade-off there as you go forward. And as we go forward to try to meet the budget requirements, I think that we're going to be given by the county, I think it's important that we strike a balance between those two issues that are out there. And it's not just those issues, it's the service levels, some additional phones, it's the tablets, it's free services that's out there, and the rate, and the revenue that comes back to the trust. Yeah, it could be different. But if you pull here, you're gonna have to push over here.
May I ask a question? If we were to eliminate the $960,000 annual compensation back to the jail, would that lower the rate to 2 cents? What would it lower the rate to?
Now, mind you, we are lowering the rate, the current rate.
Yes,
considerably.
from 25 to 19
And
cents
then
a minute.
determine what the contracts would look like with the anticipation that the more that we're able to bring in, not bring in like money-wise, but see how all of these systems work, because it will take a while to make that conversion and get all the tablets, and then recognize and have a bargaining power of a different kind when we can see how it works in action.
I'm wondering if when we're charging the 19 cents, that a percentage of that is going to the provider. So if we lower it, give up part of the 960,000, can we lower the amount charged to the defendants, to the client?
Absolutely, we can. And I don't know exactly what that number would be. You just need to give me the number, the call rate that you want me to check, and then I will submit it to them, and then they can readjust what the minimum annual guarantee would be.
I know that some states or some jurisdictions have gone to zero cost because of recognizing how important communication with families are, and the families are the ones who end up paying for the telephone calls. That's all I'm considering. And if the 960, if they're having to charge 1.5 million, say, for us to get 960, well, I don't think that works out in the wash for us.
Could I make a suggestion that I think Mr. Katz correctly pointed out the two kind of holes on this thing. One, there is obviously the current contract. The sheriff's office gets money from that. This one, that would be the same. Clearly, with this contract moving in the right direction in not only reducing the rate to the inmates, which is a very important consideration, one where I share the desire to do that. But I wonder if we could say, if we stick with this scenario for now, and then we can always revisit it. I mean, Securus or, any of the contractors are not going to have a problem, if we just say, yeah, we don't need any revenue coming back to the county. What can you give us on a rate? I don't think they're going to have any problem doing that at any point. My concern is, this is our first year operating as a trust.
Where's that
We need to make sure that we have adequate revenue to do that we're not, overburdening the county on that, because there's, other demands on those funds and all that. In other words, I guess what I'm asking is, I'd like to do what you want to do, but I'm wondering if we can wait and see for a year. They're not going to, there's clearly not going to have a problem renegotiating it. Get that. Let's just make sure that we are on sound financial footing before we do so.
And we could put language in there that would be a reopener, if we could, to make sure that they are willing to do it in the future. We could say that at some point in the future, would be willing to renegotiate the rates in lieu of less compensation.
We'll know in a year, right? We're going to know in a year whether, the county's budget situation, I hope, I don't know, maybe I'm being ambitious by that, but the point is that we'll know at some point, not too long from now. Right now, kind of like we're getting some benefit for the families now, and then we can get more during a year or so. Would that be I'm kind of trying to look at a middle ground on the matter.
If I could speak.
For your comments, I too had a conversation with Mr. Williams in long extent about all of this. And Mr. Williams, you can kind of expand for me, because I'm attempting to summarize what you told me, but there's other places in our budget where we can make up for losing some of the profit on this telephone contract. And the major urgent issue is the price to the person incarcerated. We want to see them get out. We want to see them thrive in their mental health as they're able to call their family members or whoever it is. That is an important interest in this, opposed to us padding our pockets. So if we can find the money in the budget room somewhere else, I urge us to make that determination before we just settle for the middle ground, because we're not sure what our budget will look like in 1 year.
If I could respond to that, a couple of things. First of all, I probably wouldn't choose to use the term padding our pockets, because there's no money that's coming to it. It all goes back into the operations on it, and we're going to spend every dollar that we have toward the jail operations. We're dropping it some now. If you drop it to zero, it's going to be really hard to ever get it back up. I think that would be very difficult to get it back up, and there's going to be so many changes with the new operations that we're going to go forward with different policies in place, with direct supervision, different food service, different concession services as we go down. There's so many factors in play. Being a little bit cautious here, yet still providing cheaper rates to the inmates, better service to the inmates at this point in time. I think this is a good place to be at this point. And again, 6 months down the line, when we see how some of the other changes have affected, and we are in a financial position to do this, I'm all there. But I'm not confident that we're going. I don't know that. Hopefully there are going to be places to save money. Don't know that as I sit here today.
Fair enough. I guess I'm looking for Mr. Williams to kind of tell me if I'm not in a good footing as I advocate for this.
Right. Some of it, we really don't know how much that jail is going to cost to operate. I mean, we can guess and we can look at the financials, but really, I think until we've actually operated the jail for a minute, we won't I won't be able to tell you firmly what the cost of operating that jail will be. If you look at the contract on page 7, the middle of page 7, there is a provision in there that we can adjust these compensations at any time. And if we go to a full funded kind of a system that you're offering or that you're suggesting that would be a good option, we can modify that or we can renegotiate those terms at any time. Do you see what I'm talking about?
I'm looking.
Okay. We're set.
For options for alternative compensation structures.
Yes, ma'am.
I recognize that a majority of the people who are in jail are there because they can't afford a bond. And that's, if they could make phone calls, they could get jobs, so they could afford bonds, get out, we'll have your people in there for your lower costs. This is a good first step, but a compromise would be something like 13 cents a minute instead of 19.
Well, Trustee Arnold, for the case of, let's say, the diversion hub, the system would be set up that the individuals within county would be able to use the tablet service to, for free, contact their case managers at the diversion hub while they're inside. So the people that they may be calling per minute versus who they would be calling for free for all of these services to assist them in bridging their way out would be at no expense to them under the system that Greg has been building right now.
So they could call the diversion hub?
So they could work with their case manager and call the diversion hub at no expense to them per minute using the tablet services, the way that Greg has set this up.
And their attorneys?
And their attorneys. So there's no cost to them on the minutes to that. So we're really looking at I'm not dismissing any phone calls, but pertinent phone calls to help assist them to get out will be, generally speaking, at no cost to them with the use of a tablet and be able to be face-to-face with individuals on FaceTime at no expense.
And we revisit this in 6 months?
Absolutely.
After, in December?
Absolutely. We might revisit it in 3 months.
I just know people have trouble buying a phone charger. Our clients, they're running around with phones dying because they don't have a phone charger. They're $20.
Well, while they're incarcerated in our center, they will be able to use the tablet services that Greg has set up and the phone service, and it is at no cost, which is a huge change from where we've been before.
The tablet service, get on the internet to...
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't my intention not to recognize the improvements that this contract offers. So I do recognize that, and thank you, Mr. Williams, for doing that.
And your goal?
I would be willing to, revisit this in 3 months sooner rather than later. And just know I will be willing and ready to revisit this in 3 months.
If they were not receiving so many incredible services and ability to be able to bridge out better at no expense, I would be pushing even harder. So I recognize the middle and moving forward. Mr. Brown.
Mr. Williams, another question. There's been a lot of news about online AA meetings and online treatment for substance abuse. Is any of that possible with at no charge with these instruments?
Yes, like Chair Everest had mentioned, in this contract, it allows for us to have provisions for no charge for any agency or any group that provides services to the offenders or to the arrestees. So AA meetings, church services, the hub, any of those services, team, those free phone calls and those video visitations would be free of charge. Absolutely.
Where are we going to get the list of services that will be free of charge, like in CARTA, they call in, there are quite a few services that
You can work with Greg now and start working on those services and with the hub.
Yeah.
I mean, you can call him after this meeting and start working on your list.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second.
A couple of comments. So, as members of the trust, we have several different interests, and sometimes they're aligned and sometimes they're competing. And so, we have to recognize we have a fiduciary duty to our beneficiary, the county. We have a duty to the inmates to ensure that they're getting appropriately priced and services and appropriate services better themselves while they're in our custody. So we've heard a lot of talks about cost structure. I've spoken with Greg several times on the different proposals for this service, and specifically there's another vendor that bid on this service that their minimum annual guarantee is higher. Rate per minute for their phone call is lower. Their phone commission is only half a percentage point lower. They will guarantee us more money on an annual basis, whereas with Securus, they're going to provide us a one-time $2,000 payment. And if we are to contract any time prior to 60 months, they want that $200,000 back. So if you look at, and I understand tablets are the way of the future right now, and that's a very important part of an inmate's environment going forward, and I think that's where this board has really tried to move. And so you're going to see increased video calls. And so the difference between the rate per minute on a video call is 14 cents more expensive the direction we're going, and a reduced commission from the other vendor. So I don't particularly see how leaving a bunch of money that harms our beneficiary and charging the inmates more serves a lot of our purposes. So for those reasons, I just felt I needed to point that out.
Thank you, Mr. Honeycutt.
Mr. Honeycutt? After our discussion, I did talk to Securus about that mag, and it has been increased to 1.3, and that will be all 5 years. That's a guaranteed mag for all 5 years, and also the technology fund was increased from $150,000 to $200,000, which gives us an additional $250,000 on that. So really, according to my calculations, we may be leaving a little bit of money on the table, but not as much as what there was at one point until we talked about it. And I did go back and renegotiate those numbers as you'd requested.
So with security, are you saying that they now changed their one time to a yearly?
Yes, sir.
That's not contemplated in this document.
Madam Chair, may I ask another question?
Yeah.
Mr. Williams, I at least speaking for myself, I've depended on you to evaluate and negotiate contracts. I don't see that as being my role, frankly. And so my question to you is, and I think it's a yes or no answer, have you evaluated all the proposals on a sound physical basis And is this your recommendation after having evaluated all the proposals?
Yes, sir, I have multiple times. And not just I, but my financial officer as well. And we have looked at these numbers and we have talked to these vendors. I talked to every vendor multiple times last week. So we have been very active in looking at the financials of these contracts as well as the services and trying to find that delicate balance between the two. And yes, I think this is a good contract, and it would be my recommendation that we go in this direction.
Thank you.
Just one thing of clarification. Greg, you said a little bit ago that the Securus had gone to where it's annual, and I think you were referring to what you're calling the MAG, the minimum adjusted guarantee or gross. And I'm not sure Mr. Honeycutt didn't understand that to mean the technology fund. So, okay, so yeah, so what's annual now is that increased 1.3 MAG, not the 200,000 technology fund, correct?
Both of them are annual.
Oh, great.
And for clarity's sake, Mr. Williams, I'm not questioning your ability to evaluate these contracts. It's just I think it's difficult for the trustees when the first time we're being asked to vote on a contract, the first time we're hearing about some of the significant terms is right here and right now. So I just want to make it clear I wasn't questioning your abilities.
No. I appreciate you guys' input. And again, every time I talk to a member of the trust, your input is very valuable to me, and I take it straight to heart. And I will negotiate, or I will pursue any ideas that anybody has. And I appreciate you, Mr. Honeycutt, of bringing that up when we met and talked about it. And it did get us a better offer. So I appreciate that very much.
All right, call the vote. Trustee Arnold? Aye. Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Chair? Yes. Commissioner?
Yes.
Mr. Brown? Ms. Eckler-Reckless?
Would be included, revisit in 3 months, yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
I would also note that this contract is with between Oklahoma County Detention Center and Securus, which it's not the appropriate party. And so I'm going to have to, the terms that Mr. Williams said sound favorable, but until I can actually see them in the written documents, I'm going to have to vote them.
Mr. Berry?
Yes.
Thank you. Modification of the name. Okay. Item number 6, we, kind of in comment to what Trustee Eckler-Reckless just said, we had not received the lease to be able to review. So I do understand if you just want to update us, Commissioner Calvi will release on the next.
We actually approved it this morning at the Board of County Commissioners. If given, I mean, this is obviously kind of the whole enchilada, so to speak, in terms of the agreement between the county and the trust. If people would like to see something different, I know we need to get it in place. But we did approve it this morning.
We have not seen it, so in respect to be able to recognize and see it, we've moved it to our next meeting, which as a later agenda item, I'll be calling a meeting for June 22nd, and we put it on at that time. And thank you and the county for the hard work on that side. Item number 7, Greg, this is for you and Mark. For the trustees who have not met, this is the Chief Financial Officer, Mark McCubbin. And as we are preparing to sign the lease and move in we would recognize that there's a few operational issues that were not included on the budget. There's some that are natural startup. There are some that are just generally transition. And Mark and Greg and their team have worked very diligently to identify, to the best of our knowledge of what we know now without actually being in the building, what some substantial costs or different one-time expenses may be. So, Mark?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the trustees, each of you, for the opportunity to share with you our findings this afternoon. I have worked closely with Mr. Williams, Mr. Monday, with Kevin Marble, who is our new IT director. Kevin has not yet started. I believe he starts a week from today, but he's been already very generous with his time and expertise. And we've worked together over the last month or so to assess as best we can the expected startup and transition costs for assuming operation of the jail on July 1st. I also want to thank the sheriff and his staff for their assistance, in particular Mr. Honeycutt, who's been very generous with his time and his expertise. Thank you, Danny. Also, Finance Director Melissa Hodges and Major Brandon Holmes. Everyone I've encountered over the last couple of months has been extremely accommodating and helpful, and I'm very grateful for that. And then we met last week, Mr. Williams, Mr. Monday, Mr. Marble, and I with the county IT department with Dane Coffey and Rich Stewart and their staff, who are very familiar with the jail IT infrastructure. It was a very productive meeting. Clearly, there are significant needs in this area, as I'll address shortly, but we look at it as an opportunity as well to upgrade, and we obviously look forward to working with the county in this process. So I'm going to break up our transition and startup costs into really three different categories: immediate, short-term, and then first year. So we're defining immediate needs as funding we'll need and dollars that we will need to spend in order for the authority to assume operation of the jail on July 1st. Dollars we'll need to spend in this month. And among those items are office furniture. We know that many of the admin offices are going to be moving soon to the Krause building, and the furniture and everything in it in those offices. So office furniture, certain items of kitchen equipment, payroll, insurance, and benefits for the month of June, some short-term and immediate IT costs, some dollars for potential maintenance of vehicles that we believe the authority will receive from the sheriff, and some training equipment and supplies. Total of all those items is expected to be $310,000 for the month of June. The second category we're defining as short-term costs, transition or one-time expenses that we expect to need in the first quarter of the new fiscal year, July, August. And there are really two, perhaps three line items here. The first is utilities. The utilities are not an actual startup cost, but in looking at the budget that the authority approved, the sheriff prepared, and that the trustees approved 2 weeks ago, it appears that no money for utilities was built into that FY 2021 budget. However, according to the lease draft, the authority is responsible for paying the utilities. Our understanding is that annual utility costs for the jail are around $1.7 million a year. We believe that was the number for last year. Assuming that's the case, my assumption is that we will request funding for this in our September supplemental budget. But if the authority is to pay utilities effective July 1st, that will be around $425,000 for the 3 months, July, August, and September. This is money the county is already spending, but according to the lease, the authority will be the entity spending it starting July 1st. And then another $250,000 in expected short-term IT needs as identified by Mr. Marble, again, with the caveat that the overall needs, comprehensive needs of the jail are certainly much higher than that. The total of those two, the utilities and additional IT needs, is $675,000. And then finally, third possible category would be vehicles. Our understanding is that the authority is receiving 6 vehicles for sure, and possibly a large transport bus and canine vehicle. Mr. Honeycutt, you might have more knowledge than specific knowledge than I do on this, but depending on exactly what we receive from the sheriff, we may need to request additional funding for some new vehicles, perhaps another transport van. So That is somewhat unclear to us at this point, so that's another possible short-term need. Finally, the additional first-year costs are essentially IT related. Although Mr. Marble hasn't started yet, he has prepared an estimate of what it's likely to cost to bring the jail's IT infrastructure current. Admittedly, it's a first pass assessment, but based upon a meeting with County MIS last week and his extensive experience as an IT professional, less the $300,000 that I've already mentioned, there could be as much as $2 million more needed to bring the IT system, the jail IT system current. That's network, communications, personnel, software, obviously a significant potential expense. As for possible sources of funding for these needs, we met, I guess it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, perhaps, with Mr. Honeycutt, and we believe there may be up to $1.9 million in lapsed funds or carryover funds for the detention center at the end of this fiscal year. I don't know if that has been updated since our meeting with Mr. Honeycutt a few weeks ago, but perhaps that would be a possible source of some or perhaps all of these funds needed. So that's a kind of painting with a broad brush. I would be happy to answer any questions that any of the trustees have.
Thank you, Mark. So from what I just hear, Mr. Honeycutt, are there lapsed funds that could be used towards these costs?
I don't know that I'm the authority on the use of those funds because technically they go back to the county. And so we are projecting to lapse funds. And so it's probably a discussion best between this body and the board of county commissioners or the budget board.
Oh, but there are lapsed funds that would be potentially available towards this when we work with our treasurer and the
Correct.
BET and the budget board.
And it's through across all of our funds, so the special revenue service fee and general fund. So there's a component of each of those that will have a lapse balance on them. So whether all or some are part or none, that's not for me to decide. But there are funds that we are looking to return.
So one of the requests that I have for this, thank you very much, Mr. Honeycutt, is that we recognize as a group of trustees an amount based on what you've heard and asked of Mark, and recognize that we will work with Mr. Freeman and work with the budget board and the BET to identify how much would be in the priority. So since this group, we can't necessarily ask of ourselves, it's more of a recognition of what these expenses are and an amount maximum that we can kind of pursue depending on what actually would work out within the county. Is that correct, Mark? How we would phrase that?
Yes.
So questions of Mark, maybe Mark, it might help. So I understand that we have 310 some odd just for the June to make sure that we're going through June into July fiscally responsible and covering those initial expenses. There is 400 some odd thousand that would go towards utilities depending for the summer, unless we identify different workings with the county, and then the initial IT and the general IT. Questions of Mr. McCubbin?
I don't know if this is a question for you, Mark, or just generally. So as far as an action item, should we be requesting as a body that $310,000 from the county so that we can get our own processes going at the county level to get that considered? The other ones, it sounds like we can wait, kick the tires on a little bit, but that 310 seems that would be pretty important.
Yes, well, with respect to the utilities and the number of items that aren't included on the budget that's been submitted on behalf of the authority, I would probably encourage that we work at a higher number at this point, recognizing that we'd be working with BET and the budget board and the OCC to be able to help prioritize what would be now and what's left available.
So this would be...
So that we're not asking again.
Right. Well, right. Yeah, well, he's giving some heads up. So what really, Madam Chair, are you suggesting that we go ahead and look at both what Mark identified as immediate needs and short-term needs as at this time, making that request, and then as far as first year stuff, putting that one off, or is that what's your preference?
It's really at the sake of the trustees. So if we did the first and second, then assuming that we vote and elect for the June 22nd meeting for a lot of the lease and the contracts and the MOU with the sheriff and a number of things to clear up. Having worked with BEP by that point, we should know more about what may or may not be available, and we could bring up something at the June 22nd or larger. But yes, at a minimum, the immediate and your first two tiers.
That would be my request, Madam Chair and Commissioner Calvi. That would be 310,000 and then another 675,000. So the total is 985,000. That again is exclusive of vehicles, which at this point is an unknown. I think if I would be in favor, if you agree, of items, the buckets 1 and 2 that I mentioned, and I think that would give us time to have a little more clarity on the first year costs before the trustees meet again.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Heine?
Yeah, I was just going to have another factoid about the budget that's been prepared that's flat also has what we believe is an additional sum of monies that projected to provide more than what is necessary, what we provide on that. So there's a pretty significant amount of money there as well. So
Thank you. And again, thank you for your working in diligence and including Greg and his team in that planning. Will there be, do you know if there'll be transport buses or vans that will be left at the detention center?
yes.
Yes, you know, or yes, there will be?
Yes,
You're a good lawyer.
Right, we've had some discussion. There's currently a burned up one in the parking lot that you can have. No, but I believe there's one of the transport vans that specifically we used to transport down to Lark and back that was not on the list that I've given you guys in the past that will be included. And so I'll be getting with Greg and making sure that we get that all lined out.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Just another question. It is, but it's not relevant to this particular matter. It is in the sense that we've talked about utility costs, and I'm wondering if there are plans or if there have been an energy audit that would look at energy usage, LED light bulbs, all the kinds of things that can save in that vein. And if that hasn't been done, I guess this would be a request. I mean, we ought to do that as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Ms. Eckler-Westwood, did you have a question? Or no? Of course.
I think that as we advance with the IT upgrades, that we'll find there are a lot of cost savings, energy or efficiency cost savings, so we can reallocate people into different areas. The sheriff and Mr. Honeycutt have mentioned several times that it costs them quite a bit working with this antiquated system. So when we're looking forward at it, if we're not finding the money, I think we might be able to look at where our savings will be to reallocate for it. Thank you.
I might just point out too that, I mean, some of the IT things are going to be really helpful in terms of enabling the trust and in the county to address even the COVID issue, because the more things that can be done remotely, the more resistant we are as a system, the less transport is needed, et cetera. And so, I mean, it's very much something very timely, as well as set aside the transition, even that would be very timely. So.
And we recognize that working with the county and the county clerk and the court clerks and the different technologies is really being upgraded throughout the entire system and with the Board of County Commissioners. So we certainly look forward to upgrading and be able to bridge all efficiencies. Mr. Couch.
Just want to point out that Ms. Arnell just pointed out that there are some savings. We can use it toward computers. We could use it for lowering rates. And so if there are going to be competing needs for that as we go forward, and those would be great policy discussions to have in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Couch. So we have a request from our finance and CEO for a request of up to about $960,000 at this time to request moving forward.
If with the increase is $985,000.
I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions? Again, we'll identify the best mechanisms and find out the availability and work within the system to recognize how it moves forward. Hearing none, roll call vote. Trustee Arnold.
Aye.
Mr. Couch.
Yes.
Chair is yes. Commissioner Couch.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Ms. Eckler-Weckler.
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt.
Yes.
Mr. Berry.
Yes.
Thank you. Mark, thank you very much for all your hard work. Yours and Greg's.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're on number 8. We are on number 8. We've included a resolution for the way that we've been discussing the matter so far. We are all moving along the lines of July 1, and so this resolution is saying that our full intention is that we will be taking over operations on July 1.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. There's Mr. Brown moved. Trustee Arnold seconded. Any other comments or questions?
I would just make a note that there's a couple of errors in the resolution. Specifically, it says, whereas the trust and district creating the Oakland County Criminal Justice Authority dated May 22nd, it should say 2019 instead of 2020. It may be as amended, probably need to correct that. And then the third whereas as an additional part.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. I appreciate that. Mr. Brown, with your motion move with those changes. Thank you for those changes. Ms. Arnold, if you continue to second. Any questions? Call the vote. Ms. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Chair is yes. Commissioner?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Eckler-Weckler?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes.
Exciting day. We have been working with the payment system of Oklahoma County. We have not necessarily started to authorize to work within the system of optimizing the payroll, which is certainly at a savings to be able to use the current system. So we are grateful to the county for this opportunity. But our meeting times would have to change. To be able to approve the payroll request and approve that doesn't coincide at this point. So I am requesting that as we move forward we have a special meeting for June 22nd later on the agenda, but generally speaking that we would be starting in July, the third Monday of the month, as opposed to the first Monday of the month, to better coincide with financial approvals. This is open for discussion. Rebecca, I did not see on any calendar that there was an existing meeting on the third Mondays at 1 o'clock.
And I'm in the schedule and every third Monday.
If this is available to do so. Otherwise, any comments or discussions?
Madam Chair, is it possible, it seems to me that it would be helpful to everyone for the trust and trustees to actually meet at the jail as opposed to meeting here or maybe just in addition to. Is that anything that could happen, and has that possibility been looked at?
Mr. Brown, I appreciate you for bringing it to the attention. It would not be part of this motion, but now that you've brought it to the attention, we will open it for further discussion, not at a later date.
And I'll move on the third Monday.
Second.
Comments or questions? Hearing none. Mr. Brown moved. Trustee Arnold seconded. Trustee Arnold.
Aye.
Mr. Couch.
Yes.
Chair is yes. Commissioner?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Eckler-Weckler?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes.
Thank you. It is my understanding that the sheriff's office is removing all the badging equipment and taking it to Kraus. That there is a question, one, to be able to continue on with with the employee system, that as employees have been signing on to wishing their intent to be employees of the authority, that we will be able to badge them appropriately and be able to create a badging system within the detention center. This is a cost or a system that needs to happen now so that when we do make that transition, presumably on July 1, that it's a smooth and that the employees have their new badges.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
sir. Second. Thank you, Mr. Berry. Questions, comments? Call the vote. Trustee Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Chair is yes.
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ecker-Waku?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Item 11 is for the invoice list. I do believe there were some minor changes that were corrected today. Otherwise, I ask for a motion to approve the attached invoice list.
So moved.
Second.
Comments, questions?
Madam Chair, I've made a request recently with the clerk's office to review some of the invoices of an itemized nature. And I have not received that back yet. There isn't any issue with that, is there?
No. Any questions? Call the vote. Trustee Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Commissioner?
Yes.
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 Senator? But yes. Yes. Trustee Ecker-Waku?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
No.
Mr. Berry?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Item number 12, Trustee Ecker-Waku.
Yes, I was just wanting someone from the jail, whether it be the staff there or the medical staff there, to give us an update on I believe it was a statement made to the FEJAC committee that OSU Medical is supposed to come in and provide testing for most, if not all, of everyone who's incarcerated. I would like to know the results of that, whether it's even happened yet, how many people have tested positive to date, and whether we are able to address any issues that might come up with incoming bookies. This is because we're at a position where major jails in our country are spreading the COVID-19 disease at a rate of 60 times higher than the general public. And I'm just really concerned that if one case comes in, we're going to have a mass spread if we just keep operating on very little to no testing in the jail. So that's my reason behind this agenda item, and I'm just looking for recurring updates concerning these issues.
We've got Tammy Hill here. She's with Turnkey.
Just to clarify, it's Tammy Hill?
Tammy Hill.
I just want to make sure I have it. Nice to have you and nice to meet you, Ms. Hill.
Thank you. We received 470 tests from OSU. We began testing everyone that comes through the jail. They do have the right, however, to refuse that. So anybody that will allow us to do testing, we are doing testing. We did get a report back today. I do have one positive COVID-19. We've isolated that person. He's asymptomatic.
Is it a detainee or a staff member?
It's a detainee.
Was it somebody who came in very recently?
Yes.
Okay.
How many tests have you administered so far out of the 470? About 50. We have a lot of refusals. A lot of people don't want to do the nasopharyngeal. I think we'll have more folks that will be more eager to participate in that once we get the saliva test. It's a little bit easier to convince people.
Do you know when you'll get that done?
I do not know exactly when we will get it, but as soon as we use the all in the nasal pharyngeal that we have available, they're hoping to get those in.
So we're at 50 out of 470, and we have to use the remaining before we can get saliva test.
not necessarily using them all. We're going to use them until we can get those, but we're going to go ahead and use those as well in conjunction with or whatever. If somebody wants, if we can get them used up by the time they come out with the vehicles for us, then we'll use those, but we're going to use them.
Do you have a ballpark idea of when the saliva test returns, like 6 months, 3 months?
Oh, no, I don't think it'll be that long. I would say within a month.
Okay.
So how many, do you also test the staff?
We are not testing staff at this time.
Mr. Honeycutt, is there a procedure where staff is tested?
We check temperatures every day at lineup, and then if you present with a fever, then you're turned away with instructions on how to contact your physician and the steps to take there, and what is required of you prior in time you come back to work.
Have we had any staff that have been confirmed with COVID?
In the very beginning, we had one.
We know about the training.
That's the only one.
I know medical staff.
I know medical staff. Bill's been busy.
Very.
All over. Trustee Aguirre, please, any other questions?
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. Ms. Williams, do you have a brief report for us?
Staff and I will just continue to work towards that transition. We will secure, hopefully, the rest of the contracts later this week. We have about 364 staff that we have received paperwork on to transfer into the trust. So again, really, that's about all I have to report. We just continue to look forward to the transition date. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Put on the agenda a special meeting for June 22nd, which would occur at 1 o'clock.
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Certainly, we will wrap up many of these contracts and work through what we're able to do with what we know at this time before we actually make this transition. Trustee Arnold, this is approving or not having a special meeting on June 22nd?
Yes.
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 Mr. Berry? Yes. I'm a
Yes.
yes. And the next one should probably move as smoothly. I move for adjournment. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Couch? Commissioner, Senator, Trustee Akoku?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes.
Chair is yes. We're adjourned. Thank you.
We're ready.